My alien neighbor came into my room at night. What happened next shocked me. Alex had always considered himself an ordinary man. He lived a quiet life in a small apartment on a peaceful, suburban planet where humans and aliens coexisted. He worked as a tech specialist for a company that made gadgets for intergalactic travelers. The work was straightforward, and his days usually passed by with little excitement. The only thing that stood out about Alex was his unremarkable tendency to keep to himself. He wasn't a social person, but he was antisocial either. He just preferred the simplicity of his life. That was until the day Lyra moved into the apartment next door. Lyra was unlike anyone Alex had ever met. She was an alien woman, tall and slender with violet skin and golden eyes that seemed to see straight through him. She was part of a diplomatic mission between various alien species and humans. Alex knew little about her species, but he heard whispers from the neighbors. They said she was a part of some new initiative, a program to foster peace and cooperation among different races. But despite all the promises of unity, Lyra kept to herself. She rarely left her apartment and was always seen walking around with a distant, almost melancholic expression. At first, Alex didn't think much of it. She was just another person in the building. But that changed one night when he heard a soft knock on his door. It was late, much later than anyone would typically visit. Alex was half awake from a long day at work and wasn't in the mood to entertain anyone. But curiosity got the best of him. He walked to the door and opened it, expecting to see one of his neighbors with a simple request or question. Instead, he found Lyra standing there, looking startled, her face pale under the light of the hallway. She wore a long, flowing robe made of shimmering fabric, which seemed to shift in color like the night sky. Her golden eyes were wide, and her hands trembled slightly as they held something behind her back. "Lyra," Alex said, unsure what to make of the situation. "Is everything okay?" She didn't immediately respond. She stood there for a moment silently before speaking in a soft voice. I need help," she said, her voice barely audible. Alex blinked, surprised. "Help with what?" Lyra hesitated for a moment, glancing around as though to make sure no one was watching. "I think something's following me," she whispered, eyes darting nervously. "I've been hearing strange sounds in my apartment. Whispers, like there's someone else there." "But there isn't anyone," Alex frowned. He didn't know what to make of this. He had heard stories about alien species with telepathic abilities, but he hadn't ever considered that someone in his building could be dealing with something like that. His first instinct was to send her away. He didn't get involved in things he didn't understand. But there was something in her eyes, something desperate, that made him pause. "Come inside," he said, stepping aside to let her in. "We can figure this out." Once inside, Lyra seemed to relax a little, but she remained tense, her golden eyes scanning the room constantly. She stood near the door, looking around, her hands clutching her robe tightly. Alex, not knowing what else to do, offered her a seat on the couch. "I'm not sure what's happening," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "I've been hearing these whispers every night. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me, but now it's different. They're coming closer." Alex wasn't sure if he believed her. It all seemed so strange, and he wondered if maybe she was just going through some kind of emotional stress from being on a new planet. But then he noticed something odd. Lyra's eyes, normally filled with mystery, were filled with fear. It wasn't just paranoia, it was genuine terror. Before he could respond, a sudden gust of wind blew through the apartment, even though the windows were all closed. The lights flickered. Alex turned toward Lyra, and for the first time he saw something otherworldly, something that made his blood run cold. Lyra wasn't just afraid. She was terrified because whatever had been following her was now in the room with them. "I knew it," Lyra whispered, stepping back. "They're here." The air around them seemed to grow heavier, and Alex could feel a strange, unseen presence. His skin prickled with an unnatural cold. He glanced around the room, but everything seemed normal. The furniture, the walls, nothing was out of place. But then, as if in response to the tension in the room, a soft, low sound began to fill the space like a distant murmur. It was the whispering Lyra had spoken of. Alex took a step back. "What is that?" he asked, his voice shaking with confusion and fear. Lyra's golden eyes widened. "It's them," she said softly, her breath coming in short, shaky bursts. "They're reaching out." The whispering grew louder, and Alex could now hear words, though they were incomprehensible, alien, guttural sounds that seemed to invade his mind. He reached out for Lyra, trying to understand what was happening. "It's too late," she said, her voice breaking. "I didn't think they'd find me here, but they've tracked me. I never meant for you to get involved." Alex's heart was racing. What had he gotten himself into? He had thought this was just a simple visit from a nervous neighbor, but now it was something much darker. And then, suddenly, everything went silent. The whispers stopped. The wind died down, and the tension in the air vanished as quickly as it had come. The lights returned to normal. The apartment seemed to be as it had been before, but Alex could feel that something had changed. Lyra was standing there, trembling, her eyes wide. I don't understand," she whispered. Before Alex could respond, the door to his apartment slammed open, and a dark figure appeared in the doorway. Lyra stepped in front of Alex, shielding him, and the figure, tall and shadowed, flickered like a hologram, its form indistinct but menacing. It spoke in a language Alex couldn't understand, its voice cold and mechanical. Lyra's face hardened. "I knew it," she said under her breath. "The bounty hunters have found me." The figure's eyes glowed with a dim, unnatural light as it stepped closer, its movements jerky and unnatural. Alex could feel the tension rising again, and he instinctively stepped back. Lyra turned toward him, her eyes full of sorrow. "I'm sorry, Alex," she said quietly. "But you shouldn't have gotten involved. Now they'll come for you too." The bounty hunter stepped forward, its voice cold and distorted as it made a command in an alien tongue. The air crackled with energy, and suddenly Alex found himself frozen in place, his limbs unresponsive as a wave of cold terror washed over him. Lyra stood still, but her eyes were locked onto Alex's, full of apology and regret. "I'll protect you," Lyra said, her voice steady despite the danger. "But you need to trust me, and trust in what's coming." Alex's mind raced as he struggled to understand what was happening. The bounty hunter, or whatever it was, moved closer to him, and every instinct in his body screamed for him to run. But his legs felt like stone, and his body refused to obey. The cold, metallic voice of the creature echoed in the room, its alien words foreign and incomprehensible. Alex could feel the air growing heavier, colder. Lyra stood protectively in front of him, but her eyes were filled with an unmistakable fear. She was scared, really scared. He watched as Lyra, her violet skin shimmering in the dim light, clenched her fists. The tension in the air was thick, and Alex felt like he couldn't breathe. The alien figure in front of them moved closer, its glowing eyes fixed on Alex, its expression unreadable. "I told you not to get involved," Lyra said softly, her voice trembling. "But now it's too late." The bounty hunter's form flickered like a broken hologram, and Alex could see only brief flashes of its true shape. It was a silhouette of something tall and imposing, with sharp, angular features that were unnatural to his human eyes. It didn't look like anything Alex had seen before. It spoke again in that same, cold voice, and this time Alex could understand a few words, although the language was strange, harsh. He could tell it was threatening something. His heart raced as the fear took hold of him. What did it want? What was it going to do to him? Lyra's eyes locked onto Alex's, and he saw a mix of regret and determination. She stepped forward slightly, drawing herself up to her full height, her posture rigid with resolve. "Please," Lyra said, her voice steady now, though the fear was still there. "You need to listen. I can explain everything, just trust me." The bounty hunter paused, its eerie presence looming over them like a dark cloud. It cocked its head to the side, studying Lyra as if considering her words, but it didn't back away. Instead, it reached for something on its belt, pulling out a small device that hummed with an unsettling energy. Lyra turned to face Alex fully, her face serious. "I know this is hard to believe, but you're in danger now. It's not just me they want. It's you too." Alex tried to speak, but his voice caught in his throat. The pressure in the room was overwhelming. He tried to move, to break free from the strange paralysis that held him in place, but his body felt numb. His mind screamed for him to run, to fight back, but his limbs wouldn't respond. You're not alone in this," Lyra continued, her eyes softening. "You've been chosen, you're the key to stopping them." The words didn't make sense to Alex. Chosen? How? Why? He was just a regular guy, nothing special. He had no idea what she meant, but before he could ask, the bounty hunter's cold voice interrupted, sharper this time. Lyra didn't seem to be afraid of it anymore. "I can't explain everything right now," she said, her tone growing firmer. "But I can keep you safe, you just have to trust me." The bounty hunter's eyes flared brightly, almost blinding, and it stepped closer to Lyra. Alex's fear intensified, but Lyra stood her ground. She wasn't backing down. Then, with a sudden, fluid motion, Lyra raised her hand. A glowing blue light enveloped her palm, swirling like a vortex. Alex's eyes widened. The energy around her was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was raw, powerful, and alien. The bounty hunter hesitated for a moment. Lyra's power was something it clearly hadn't expected. The energy surrounding her intensified, the light becoming blinding as it shot out from her hand and hit the creature with a force that shook the walls. The figure was knocked back, its form flickering wildly, as if struggling to maintain its shape. Alex gasped as the room filled with a loud crackling sound, like static electricity building up before a storm. The figure's form trembled, flickered again, and then it collapsed, dissolving into a pile of shimmering dust. It was gone. Alex blinked, trying to comprehend what had just happened. One moment the alien was towering over him, and the next it was nothing but particles scattered across the floor. Lyra lowered her hand, her expression tired but relieved. She turned to Alex, her golden eyes searching his face, waiting for some sort of reaction. "That was," Alex began, but his voice faltered. He couldn't put into words what he had just witnessed. His head was spinning and his heart was still racing. What just happened?" Lyra sighed, stepping back and rubbing her temples. "That was only the beginning," she said softly. "The bounty hunter was just the first of many. They're coming for me, and now they're coming for you too." Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had been living an ordinary life, no alien invasions, no mysterious forces threatening him. But now his reality had completely shattered. Everything he thought he knew about the world was a lie. There were things, powerful, dangerous things, lurking in the shadows, and somehow he was caught right in the middle of it. "You're not the only one who's in danger," Lyra said quietly, glancing at him. "They're after anyone who might stand in their way. But you've got something that makes you different, something they need." Alex didn't know what to say. He wanted to ask more questions, about why he was involved, why the bounty hunter had been after him, what Lyra had meant by him being chosen. But his mind was still reeling from the attack. Everything had happened so quickly, so suddenly. "Who are they?" Alex asked, finally finding his voice again. "Who wants me?" Lyra paused, looking down at the floor as if gathering her thoughts. "They're the Orcians, a race of conquerors who have spread through the galaxy, taking over planets and enslaving species. They've been searching for you for a long time. I don't know exactly why, but I think you have a role to play in stopping them, and they won't stop until they have you." Alex's stomach churned. He had heard stories about alien invasions and galactic wars in sci-fi movies, but he never thought it would be something that would happen to him. Yet here he was, standing in the middle of his apartment, with an alien woman who seemed to be telling him that his life had just taken a turn for the worst. "I don't know what I have to do with this," Alex said, shaking his head. "I'm just a tech guy. I'm not some hero." Lyra stepped closer, her eyes gentle but firm. "You don't have to be a hero," she said. "You just need to survive, and I'm going to help you." Alex didn't know what to make of all this. He still couldn't fully wrap his mind around what had just happened. But one thing was clear: he couldn't go back to the normal life he had known. The Orcians were coming, and now he was a part of something much bigger than he ever imagined. "Get some rest," Lyra said softly. "We'll need to move soon, and we can't afford to be caught off guard." Alex nodded slowly, though his mind was still spinning. There was no going back now. The night had brought him face to face with an alien threat, and whatever happened next, he knew he had no choice but to trust Lyra. The next few days passed in a blur. Alex couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so disoriented, so out of control of his own life. Every time he closed his eyes, the image of the bounty hunter, its glowing eyes, its cold, inhuman presence, flashed before him. He kept telling himself it was over, that he could go back to his normal life. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. He couldn't ignore what had happened. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him, lost in thought. His apartment felt emptier now, as though the walls themselves had shifted, their familiar comfort replaced with an unshakable sense of unease. Lyra had left the night after the bounty hunter's attack, saying she needed to make preparations for what was coming. She had promised to return, but the longer she was gone, the more anxious Alex became. Lyra was his only connection to the truth of what was happening, but even with her, there was so much she hadn't explained. Who exactly were the Orcians? Why was he the one they were after? And what made him so special? He was just a regular guy, nothing extraordinary. The doorbell rang, snapping Alex out of his thoughts. He stood up, his heart racing. He hadn't been expecting anyone, and for a moment he wondered if it was another bounty hunter, this time coming for him. He hesitated before moving toward the door, his hand hovering over the handle. But when he opened it, it wasn't the cold, metallic figure of an alien warrior. Instead, standing there looking a little disheveled but determined, was Lyra. "Lyra," Alex breathed in relief, stepping back to let her in. "Where have you been?" "I had to get some things in order," she interrupted, stepping inside quickly, her golden eyes scanning the room before she closed the door behind her. "We don't have much time." Alex frowned, following her as she walked to the center of the room. Her demeanor was different now, more serious, more focused. Whatever she had been preparing for, it was about to happen. "I've been thinking about what you said," Alex began, his voice hesitant. "About the Oryxians and about me. I don't understand why they're after me, Lyra. I'm just a guy. I'm not some soldier or hero. I don't have some special power." Lyra turned to face him, her eyes softening but still intense. "You have something more powerful than you realize," she said, her voice low. "The Oryxians are not just after you because of some power you might have. They're after you because you are human. They've been watching your species for a long time, and they believe that humans have something they need." Alex shook his head. "But I don't understand. I'm just—" "You're the key," Lyra said, cutting him off, her voice firm. "The Oryxians believe that humans are the final missing piece to their plan. They're trying to unlock something, something that will give them unimaginable power. And they believe you're the one who can help them find it." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. "What is it? What are they trying to find?" Lyra hesitated before speaking again. "It's an ancient energy, a force that exists in the fabric of the universe itself. It's something humans have unknowingly been tapping into for centuries, but the Oryxians think they can control it. They want to harness it, use it to conquer entire galaxies, and they believe you're the one who can unlock its full potential." Alex couldn't believe what he was hearing. Ancient energy, a force humans were unknowingly tapping into. It sounded like something out of a science fiction novel. But then he remembered the power he'd seen in Lyra's hands, the way she had defeated the bounty hunter with nothing more than a wave. Maybe there was more to this than he realized. "You're saying I have this power?" Alex asked, his voice shaking. Lyra nodded. "Not exactly. But you're connected to it in a way that the Oryxians don't fully understand. They believe that by controlling you, they can unlock the full potential of this force, and they're willing to destroy everything in their path to get to you." A heavy silence settled between them. Alex took a step back, trying to process the information. His head felt like it was spinning. Just a few days ago, he had been an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. Now he was part of a galactic war, the target of an alien race, and at the center of a power struggle that could change the universe itself. "What happens if they get to me?" Alex asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lyra looked at him, her expression darkening. "If the Oryxians control you, they'll use you to harness the energy. They'll become unstoppable. They'll destroy entire civilizations, enslave entire species. The galaxy will fall under their rule." Alex swallowed hard. He wasn't sure he could even comprehend the weight of what she was saying. A part of him wanted to turn away, to ignore it all and go back to his old life. But deep down, he knew that wasn't an option anymore. "So what do we do?" he asked, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. Lyra's gaze softened. "We fight. We find a way to stop them before they can use you, and we find the others, the ones who can help." "Others?" Alex asked, confused. Lyra nodded. "There are more like you, humans and even some aliens who have been awakened to this energy. They're scattered across the galaxy, but they're hidden, living in the shadows, waiting for the moment to act. I'm going to take you to them." Alex nodded slowly, his mind racing. This was it. The moment he had feared, the moment he had been dreading, had finally arrived. He was no longer just a man caught in the middle of an alien conspiracy. He was a part of something much bigger, something he could no longer ignore. "Are you ready?" Lyra asked, her voice soft but filled with resolve. Alex took a deep breath. There was no going back. "I'm ready." Lyra smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "We'll leave now. It's going to be dangerous, but I'll be with you. We'll get through this." Together, as she reached out to touch his arm, Alex could feel the warmth of her hand, and for the first time since all of this began, he felt like maybe, just maybe, there was hope. They had a long road ahead of them, filled with danger and uncertainty, but with Lyra by his side, Alex was starting to believe that he could face whatever came next. And as they walked out of the apartment and into the unknown, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that his life, as ordinary as it had once been, was now part of something much greater, a fight for the future of the galaxy itself. The next few hours passed in a blur. Alex followed Lyra through the quiet streets of the city, the sounds of distant traffic and the hum of the night air doing little to calm his nerves. Everything felt different now. The apartment that had once felt like home now seemed like a distant memory, a place that no longer belonged to him. His life had changed completely, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for what lay ahead. Lyra was leading the way, her pace steady and purposeful. Her eyes scanned their surroundings constantly, her golden irises flickering in the dim light as if she were always alert, always ready for danger. Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of awe mixed with fear. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, beautiful, powerful, and yet somehow fragile. "We're going to the underground base," Lyra said, breaking the silence. "It's the safest place we can go right now. The others are waiting for us there." "Others?" Alex asked, still trying to grasp the full scope of what he had gotten himself into. "You mean other humans like me?" Lyra nodded, her expression serious. "Yes, but not just humans. There are other species too, people who have awakened to the energy you're connected to. They've been hiding for years, waiting for the right moment to fight back. We'll need their help if we're going to stop the Orcians." The Orcians. The name sent a chill through Alex's body. Every time he thought about them, the weight of the situation grew heavier. These weren't just some alien invaders. They were conquerors, and they had their sights set on him. As they walked, Alex tried to make sense of everything. He had been a regular guy, living an ordinary life. Now he was involved in something far larger than he could comprehend. His connection to this mysterious energy, whatever it was, made him a target. But he wasn't the only one. There were others like him, people with special abilities, and Lyra was taking him to meet them. "Are they ready to fight?" Alex asked, his voice uncertain. "How are we going to stop the Orcians?" Lyra glanced over at him, her face filled with a quiet resolve. "We don't know all the answers yet, but we're going to learn together. You'll see. We'll train and we'll prepare. There are many of us who have been waiting for the moment to act. Now is that moment." Alex's heart raced. He had never thought of himself as a fighter. He was just a tech guy, a man who solved problems with gadgets and codes. But now he had no choice. He couldn't back out. The fate of the galaxy, his world, his future, was on the line. "Don't worry," Lyra said, sensing his anxiety. "You won't be alone in this." They reached a large, unmarked building at the edge of the city. It looked like any other office complex, but Alex could tell there was something hidden beneath the surface. Lyra led him through a side door and down a narrow hallway, her pace quickening. They arrived at an elevator, and Lyra punched in a series of numbers. The doors opened, revealing a small control room with several alien and human figures already inside. They turned to look at Lyra, and Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of awe as he took in the diverse group. Some had strange, alien features, while others looked just like ordinary people. But all of them had one thing in common, the same determination in their eyes. "This is Alex," Lyra said, her voice calm but commanding. "He's the one we've been waiting for." The group exchanged looks, some nodding in acknowledgement, others sizing Alex up with curiosity. There were 5 of them in total, and as they introduced themselves, Alex felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. They were all so different, yet they all shared a common goal. A tall, muscular man with dark skin and sharp features stepped forward. "I'm Eric," he said, his voice deep and firm. "We've been watching the Orcians for years. We know what they're capable of, and we've been waiting for someone like you to come along." Alex felt a strange weight on his shoulders as Eric spoke. The others seemed to regard him with a mixture of respect and expectation. It was clear that they were counting on him, and the thought of it made his stomach churn. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us," said a woman with blue skin and delicate butterfly-like wings. Her name was Kira, and her eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. "The Orcians are relentless, but we can't fight them without knowing everything about what they're planning. And you, Alex, hold the key." Alex glanced at Lyra, who stood beside him, her expression steady. He could see the trust she had in him, and it made him feel a little less alone. "I'm just a regular guy," Alex said, shaking his head. "I don't have any special powers. I don't even know what this energy is that you keep talking about." "You will," Lyra said softly. "But it's not just about power. It's about understanding your connection to the energy and using it to protect those you care about. The Orixians don't just want to control you, they want to control everything. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words. He was no longer just a bystander in his own life. He had been thrust into the center of something much bigger than he could have ever imagined. And now, the fate of the galaxy rested on his shoulders. As the group began to discuss their next steps, Alex tried to focus on the task ahead. They were planning an attack on an Orixian base, a place where they could gather intel on the enemy's movements and learn more about their plans. It was dangerous, but it was necessary. Alex could see the determination in everyone's eyes, and despite his fear, he knew that he had to be a part of it. There was no turning back now. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Alex trained with the others, learning how to tap into the energy that had been awakened within him. At first, it was overwhelming. The power was raw, untamed, and it felt like it was both inside and outside of him. Lyra helped him focus, teaching him how to channel it, how to control it. It wasn't easy. There were times when Alex felt like he was on the verge of losing himself to the energy, but with Lyra's guidance, he began to make progress. "I know this is difficult," she told him one evening as they sat together, resting after a long training session. "But you're getting stronger every day." Alex nodded, but he wasn't sure if he believed her. He felt like he had barely scratched the surface of what he was capable of, and every time he tried to use the energy, it felt like it was slipping through his fingers. "Don't rush it," Lyra said, her voice soothing. "You don't have to master it all at once. Just take it one step at a time." And so he did. Every day he focused on small exercises, trying to learn how to harness the power that was inside him. Slowly but surely, he began to feel more in control. And as he trained with the others, he started to see how each of them had learned to use their unique abilities to fight the Orixians. One afternoon, after a particularly intense training session, Lyra took him aside. "You're ready," she said, her eyes filled with pride. "It's time to go." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. He wasn't sure if he was ready, but he knew there was no turning back. "Let's do this," he said, his voice steady despite the fear that gnawed at him, and so they prepared to face the Orixians. The battle for the galaxy was about to begin, and Alex was no longer just a tech guy. He was a part of something much bigger than himself. And for the first time since all of this began, he felt like he had a purpose. The night before the mission, Alex couldn't sleep. He lay in his cot, staring up at the ceiling of the underground base. The dim light from the overhead bulb barely illuminated the room, but it was enough to cast shadows on the walls. It had been days since he first stepped into this strange new world, and the fear he had once felt had grown into something else, something far more daunting. He wasn't sure what would happen when they finally faced the Orixians, but he knew one thing for sure: there was no turning back now. Lyra had briefed him earlier that day about the mission. It was risky, but it was their best shot at gathering information on the Orixians' plans. The group was planning to infiltrate a hidden base on a remote moon, where the Orixians had been storing advanced technology. If they could disable their weapons systems and access their data, they might be able to gain the upper hand. Alex was both terrified and determined. He had trained with Lyra and the others for days, learning how to tap into the mysterious energy flowing within him, but he still didn't feel ready. It felt like there was so much more he needed to learn, so many more skills he had to master. Yet with the others counting on him, there was no time for doubt. A soft knock on the door broke his thoughts. He sat up quickly, his heart pounding. "Come in," he called out. The door creaked open, and Lyra stepped inside. She closed it quietly behind her and stood in the center of the room, her golden eyes reflecting the faint light. "You're still awake," she said, her voice soft but knowing. Alex nodded. "I can't stop thinking about everything, about tomorrow." Lyra walked over and sat on the edge of his cot, her gaze steady as she looked at him. "I know how you feel. I've been in your shoes before. The uncertainty, the fear of the unknown. But you're ready, Alex. I believe in you." Alex sighed, his shoulders slumping. "I don't feel ready. Every time I try to focus, I feel like I'm just one step behind." "You're further along than you realize," Lyra said, her voice full of reassurance. "We all start somewhere. It's not about being perfect. It's about trusting yourself. Trusting the energy inside you." Alex ran a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling inside him. "But what if I can't control it? What if I mess up? The Orixians are ruthless. If we fail—" Lyra's hand rested gently on his arm, her touch grounding him. We've come this far, Alex. Together, we're stronger than you think. You don't have to do this alone. He looked up at her, his heart heavy. But I don't even understand what this energy is. What makes me the key to stopping them? Lyra smiled faintly. Sometimes the answers don't come all at once. Sometimes they come when you least expect it. Alex stared at her, trying to understand her cryptic words. It was clear she believed in him, trusted him more than he trusted himself. And despite all his doubts, something deep inside him told him she was right. Tomorrow would change everything. Okay, Alex said after a long pause. I'll do my best. That's all any of us can do, Lyra replied. We'll face this together. I'm not going anywhere. She stood up and Alex followed her lead, his nerves still frayed but his resolve strengthening. The following morning, they gathered in the command center. The air was thick with anticipation as Lyra and the others checked their gear, preparing for the dangerous mission ahead. Alex stood at the back trying to focus on his training. He had to stay calm, he had to stay focused. The others were relying on him. Eric, the tall and muscular fighter, stepped forward, his expression serious. We've got one chance to make this work, he said. We can't afford any mistakes. If we get caught, we won't get caught, Lyra interrupted, her voice firm. Alex is ready, we're all ready, we'll do this. Alex felt a wave of gratitude for Lyra's confidence in him, but he also felt the weight of the responsibility. It was a lot to bear, knowing that the lives of so many depended on the success of this mission. He wasn't just fighting for his own survival anymore, he was fighting for the galaxy. Kira, the alien with butterfly-like wings, nodded. We'll enter through the ventilation shaft. It's the least guarded. We disable the weapons systems, gather intel, and get out. We'll have backup waiting. Alex nodded along with the others, trying to push aside his fear. The plan sounded straightforward, but he knew things never went according to plan in situations like this. There were always unexpected twists. After final preparations, they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the moon. As the ship lifted off, Alex stared out the window, watching the city below grow smaller and smaller. There was no going back now. The journey felt longer than it actually was. The ship's hum was the only sound as they traveled through the cold expanse of space. Alex sat in silence, his thoughts racing. What would they find when they reached the base? Would they succeed? Or would the Oryxians be waiting for them? Stay focused. Lyra's voice cut through his thoughts as if she had sensed his anxiety. You're doing great. Just remember everything you've learned. Alex nodded, taking a deep breath. He had trained for this moment, and he had to trust in his ability to handle whatever came his way. He couldn't let his fear control him, not now. The shuttle finally descended onto the surface of the moon. The base came into view, a dark, imposing structure hidden beneath the surface. The air was still, and the landscape was eerily quiet, with nothing but barren rock as far as the eye could see. They landed in a secluded area, far from the main entrance. They moved quickly, making their way to the ventilation shaft. Alex's heart was pounding as they crawled through the narrow tunnel, the only sound the quiet scuffling of their boots against the metal floors. Finally, they reached the control room. It was exactly as they had planned, quiet, unguarded, but the moment they entered, something felt off. This is too easy, Eric whispered. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Stay alert. They split up to disable the weapons systems and gather intel, but as Alex approached the control panel, a sudden alarm blared. The base was on lockdown. They found us, Kira hissed. We've got company. Alex's heart skipped a beat as the sound of heavy footsteps echoed through the halls. The Oryxians were coming. They had to move fast. Get to the extraction point, Lyra ordered, her voice commanding. Now, Alex's mind raced as they sprinted through the corridors. The Oryxians were closing in, but the team moved with precision, their training kicking in as they fought to escape. Alex felt the energy inside him stir, as if it had been waiting for this moment. He didn't hesitate. He reached out, his hands glowing with the raw power of the energy he had learned to control. The Oryxian soldiers appeared ahead, their weapons raised. Alex didn't think, he just acted. With a surge of power, he pushed the soldiers back, sending them crashing into the walls with a force they couldn't resist. The team continued to run, but Alex stayed behind for a moment, making sure no one followed them. Alex, come on, Lyra called, urgency in her voice. He turned and ran, feeling the power inside him settle into a rhythm. They reached the extraction point just as the Oryxians closed in, and with one final push, they boarded the shuttle and took off, leaving the base behind. As the moon grew smaller behind them, Alex collapsed into a seat, breathing heavily. They had made it out. They had survived. "We did it," Lyra said, her voice filled with pride. "You did it." Alex looked around at the team, the people who had believed in him even when he hadn't believed in himself. He wasn't the same person who had stepped onto this mission. He had found his strength, his purpose. "This isn't over," Eric said, his voice low. "We've got a long fight ahead of us, but we'll win, together." Alex nodded, his heart filled with a sense of hope. They weren't just surviving anymore, they were fighting back, and with the energy inside him, he knew they could win.